All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast out there and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. London's first, London's finest, coming through again on the day. Chelsea heading to another European final. The prestige is maybe a little less, but it's some teams don't know how to get the job done. At least in this scenario, Chelsea did, Nick.
Yeah, I think the prestige should lead us to our stinger. Hit it, Jake. The conference. God, I'm never going to tire of it, Dan. I am never going to. I love it so much.
And the downvotes on YouTube and the people stopping, listening right in the car or wherever you're listening from.
Dan, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm wearing a shirt.
You should narrate what you're wearing again, because it's an audio first format.
This is what I'm saying. I'm narrating. It has the Club World Cup badge on it and our second Champions League badge on it. This is the Cesar Azpilicueta shirt, of course, after we won in Porto. Yeah. And you know what's great about it, Dan? We'll see things they'll never see. And I think that everyone needs to say that to an Arsenal fan in their life, because it turns out to win this gold badge, you actually have to win a Champions League. And so you don't even get invited to the party if you're not a part of that. You know what I'm saying? And then the second thing is, to get one of these on the old side, you also have to win a Champions League. And look, we're not in the Champions League, or hope to be. We're not there. But boy, the last day and a half have been tasty. It's just been a wonderful time to see your sworn rivals fail miserably in the face of all the pressure, and then for you to just be able to play a couple of teenagers and advance to a final. So here we are, and I think we're pretty ecstatic about the week that was.
Well, the week that was, again, this is going to be the Djurgården second leg match review. Then also, because we're talking about finals, we've got a match this weekend in the Premier League that kind of feels like a final, considering that if you win, you are way, way closer, and the probability is going to skyrocket that you are in the Champions League next season. So a must-win game. We got that match preview on the back half with Sam, but we're going to have a little bit of a conversation again just around the Djurgården match, and really, I think, pulling back just a little bit on the whole Europa Conference League campaign, Nick, just to kind of talk about some thoughts, feelings, opinions on it, because again, it's a 1-0 match with a bunch of rotation. There was not a ton of tactical items to break down, but let's start with a couple through match reviews just to set the stage for people who maybe decided they were going to take the night off as well, just like Cole Palmer.
Well, great rest for our boy Cole and so many others. Spanish Joe with Youth Cruise Control. Childish Gabino with Skull Jerty Bastards. I like that. That's good. Andrew McDougall, Pure Profit Showcase, won the Porto 5. Porto, where we won the Champions League, Arsenal. AJ Heston, I should say, rested the weary. We did. And then Enox with All Betis On. Let's go.
Oh, I just had to go very basic with more finals then. I mean, that's just like we're going to be in more finals this season than Mikel Arteta's team, which feels really, really nice. And, we haven't had a lot that we've been able to troll about this season, so I'm going to dust it off. Feels good. He beat Liverpool again for the first time in a while. I mean, this has been a really nice week. It's been a really nice week as a 24-25 season Chelsea supporter. If you didn't enjoy this week, I think you're having a hard time, maybe just outside of life, and I hope things get better.
Yeah, take this week. Don't take it for granted, because they haven't been around that often. Mine was final training exercise. This is probably the last easy match of the year, and so I'm glad we got to just very comfortably take care of business with not our starters. So it's the benefit of taking care of business in the first leg, is you just get to do whatever the hell you want in the second leg and rest players for the weekend.
Oh, we are going to get all into that conversation about Djurgården in the second half and the second leg after just a quick ad at the top, because again, this one's a little bit funky in terms of the format and structure. So just enjoy us on this Friday or Saturday when you're listening. All right. It was the second leg at home, Stamford Bridge, this past Thursday, May the 8th, 2025 in the UECL. it was a 1-0 victory for Chelsea. The good guys won again, 5-1 on aggregate. And of course, Kieran Dewsbury Hall, just absolutely the individual that everyone had circled to score in this fixture with a wonderful assist from Tyreek George to set him up there. We did see some rotation. We saw Jorgensen between the sticks. It's a back line of Josh Benoit, Tosin, and Mallow. You know, just because I know that
we're still on the first names, huh?
On Thursday nights we're a little bit more casual. We got Jaden, Mark, Reese, and Kieran as your midfield grouping, and then you had Reggie. That's right, Reggie. And then Tyreek as your kind of two most further forward players. You had Shim, Genesis, and Trev coming off the bench as the only subs used because everybody else got the night off, which was nice.
Damn right. Yeah, it was great. I mean, obviously we'll talk about Reggie at length here in the first part of this episode, but it's nice to be able to rest some players. Obviously, you have your captain in there just to make sure stuff doesn't slide too much as far as standards go. But yeah, pretty simple, straightforward.
Well, and not just that, but you actually saw, it was a full half for Shim. It was at the 70th minute when Jadon Sancho and Genesis swapped out too. So you got decent minutes too for those youth players that were coming into this one. You always are like, oh, can we get one more? Can we get one more? I just appreciate the fact that there was an intention clearly behind this to get a few guys in, and that's awesome. That's what we should hope to see. People clamor for it. People hope for it all season. This is the type of game you get a chance to do it. It's fantastic. Anyway, there's some stats. 1.33 expected goals for Chelsea, 2.52 for Djurgården. We had two big chances on a total of 17 shots on the day. We had plenty of the ball, 65% possession. One random stat about Reggie. 16 years, 200 days old. He becomes the youngest player to ever start a European match for Chelsea. And the stat that Opta had, he's so young that he was born 5 months after John Terry slipped and missed his penalty in the shootout during the 2008 Champions League final versus Man United.
Opta, come on. That's just unnecessary.
Yeah, the shithouse moment of this game actually came from Opta's post-stat stat.
Yeah, two-footed Opta. That's unnecessary as hell.
And there was no shithouse moment in the match, right, Nick? That's pretty fair.
No, training exercise, no.
Okay. Well, maybe then just kind of taking a little thought about it. Mission almost done. We're not unfurling banners yet. We're not celebrating it as absolutely complete. But this was a campaign within the UEFA that Chelsea had been forecasted from the time they were landing in the competition to be the odds-on favorites. Mm-hmm. It was something we all expected as supporters. It was kind of like if you don't get this done, what did you do wrong over the course of the season? Because the caliber of our team and the quality definitely should, and in most cases was far beyond the teams we were playing against. 14 total matches played so far, 12 wins, 2 losses, 41 goals for, 10 goals allowed. It has been an absolute battering that Chelsea have been able to deliver throughout the majority of this competition. The Servette loss 2-1 after we had kind of gone up and maybe got a little too casual. And then the Warsaw game where we, again, just fell off a little bit because things outside of that, it was a pretty comprehensively good competition for Chelsea, a good opportunity to get players that maybe weren't necessarily always featuring in the Premier League side minutes. Gave Maresca a chance to really run the side out, to experiment a little bit. I don't want to be back in the competition anytime soon. I want to be back in the Champions League every single year, be back to trying to win the Champions League every single year. But for a first entry into it and what we needed to accomplish to feel good about this, he did what he was supposed to. So hats off to Enzo Maresca and hats off to the players.
Yeah, you look back at the early stages of the UEFA, and Servette's probably our hardest competition in this tournament so far. You really think about it. That 2-0 in the home leg, and then we lost in the away leg 2-1. We barely kind of scraped by that on aggregate, and so that was August 22nd and August 29th. When the team was barely, had started playing football at that point.
When the team was as young as our average starting lineup.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, I mean, since then it's just been all gas, no brakes, except for the slip up at home to Warsaw, which was pathetic and definitely deserves to be looked at again. But we're still, in these last couple of rounds, we're 3-1 on aggregate over Copenhagen, we're 4-2 on aggregate over Warsaw, we're 5-1 on aggregate over Djurgården. We had an 8-0 win against Noah in there. I think we'll all fondly remember 5-1 against Shamrock Rovers. I mean, what this tournament has done is, I think, one, given a ton of experience with a ton of players who wouldn't have had it otherwise this season, balanced out the minutes, kept players who would have been very unhappy on the bench otherwise some well-needed playing time. And it, I think, allowed our younger players to get way, way more minutes than they would have in a normal season, whether in the Europa League or in the Champions League. So, I mean, yes, knock on wood, we get it done against Betis. It's not going to be an easy game. They're playing really well right now. And, I think we just need to mentally prepare for it. Like, that's not going to be a 5-1 type of game for Chelsea, probably. But you think about what this competition's done, and I think your Ties, your Joshes, Genesis, Reggie, all the guys who made their debuts in this competition, it'll be a really, really great thing. And keeping guys like Kieran Dewsbury Hall, Benoit Badiashile, Tosin in the mix and playing and available to step up if we do need them in the A team. I think it's a good competition for that. Again, you're right. I would never want to be back in it, but it was, if we win it, it'll be fun while it lasted.
So just maybe a couple of quick reminders on a few things stat-wise that are fun and interesting. Do you know who the top goal scorer is still in the campaign for Chelsea?
Nkunku?
No, Mark Guiu at 6 goals.
You're shitting me. Really?
Forgotten man, Mark Guiu. Now, if you're talking about total goal contributions, it is Christopher Nkunku at 8 overall, 5 goals and 3 assists. Enzo Fernandez right behind him, 1 goal and 6 assists in the competitions. Also, good competition for Jadon Sancho at the 6 total goal contributions involved overall. The minutes piece you talked about, that I think is probably the most interesting thing because, Kieran Dewsbury Hall with the most minutes of any player in the Chelsea side, followed just behind him is Jorgensen. So those two were the clear winners of this competition, being able to get a ton of minutes. Because when you flip to them for the Premier League season, I mean, Dewsbury Hall has 260 minutes. And now with today's 90, it puts him over 1,000 minutes here on this competition. So, I mean, if he didn't get that, I mean, I'm sure he would have been very unhappy this season. And then you look at the players you also talked about, like Tyreek George, 675 minutes before this match because FBref hasn't updated. And if you look at where he was in the Premier League this season, 103 minutes. Mm-hmm. Super huge that if you have these type of competitions, you have to manage the squad effectively. You have to be able to bring those players in. And, I think in general, we've seen some pretty decent squad management. And Josh is at 500 minutes before this. So yet in another 90 for him in the league. I mean, he's at 170. So it was used appropriately to bring through a couple of young players. You might have wanted more across the entirety of the competition in some of the draws where you felt a little bit more secure, or maybe against like Shamrock Rovers when you're just kind of like cruising through the group round. But, that feels like very small nits to pick because at the end of the day, we're in a final. There's some good stuff here. No major injuries. Like, I don't know how else you can take it.
Yeah. I mean, we made it to a European final. Others perhaps didn't. So nothing to sniff at, Dan.
Well, let's maybe shift a little bit then, because, I think there's probably a couple players we can talk about. In particular, Reggie Walsh getting a start, as we mentioned. Big opportunity for him. Reska had some comments on Chelsea's website before the match, talking about how, quote, he is talented. Technically, he's fantastic. I really like him. Between the lines, you can see immediately that he has something about him. He's only 16, so he needs to work hard. He needs to continue. And that I like his personality. He's worked with us during the season, and he's not shy. He's always asking for the ball. He's shouting. He's talking. I like him. He's a good player. Yeah, I think there are maybe people who I felt like were a little harsh on grading a performance in what effectively was a dead rubber, don't get injured game. But I was just more excited to see him get an opportunity to play.
He's 16 years old, man. And he's playing big time football. Yeah, I know that the Conference League isn't the biggest competition, but imagine making your debut at 16 years old. And most players, even though Chelsea are a young squad, most players are 7, 8, 9, 10 years older than you. Like, it's an incredible achievement for him. It's an incredible achievement for his family. He should feel amazing about it. He should feel great that, his work in training propelled him to start a game at 16 years old for Chelsea Football Club. I mean, you have to remember Josh and Ty just got their first appearances, right? Like and they've been far down the rankings in terms of like making it through all the under 16, under 17, under 18. Like he's still like a young kid. And yeah, maybe he didn't make all the right moves today, but I thought he was dynamic. He tried a lot of stuff. He was trying to figure out, the right kind of positioning to get passes in from the center of the park. And he was trying to figure out where Ty's run was going to be mostly. And I don't think it really came off that often, but that's okay. Like he is a young player. And, again, I'm just excited for him. I'm excited for Genesis as well. I thought Genesis looked fantastic when he came on. Really excited for him as a player as well. But, he's a 7-1 on SofaScore. And we've said SofaScore is not everything in terms of scoring, but like 7-1 on your debut, not bad.
Any other thoughts on the game? I mean, I want to talk more about the final, but I feel like this was just again, get it done, feel good about it. Everybody's happy for Dewsbury Hall to get another goal. I mean,
yeah, no, I'm happy for Kieran. I mean, I thought that we just we were in second gear the entire time. It was very obvious that we were in second gear.
You think we got out of first? Second is generous.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that was the point, right? Just control the game, slow it down, make it really difficult, and, give Genesis, Shim, and Reggie some time. And I just think, Ty and Josh are almost like the elder statesmen in that group, which is so crazy to think about, but they have to be proud of their colleagues as well. I mean, I'm excited that we got through. I'm excited that there was no incident in this game. There was no injury. I thought the tackle on Malo Gusto in the first half kind of looked bad, and I was like, oh, that'd be pretty terrible. But no, it wasn't a game filled with a ton of quality, but when you score 4 goals away in the first leg of the tie, it doesn't need to be. Like you can just play in second gear, get it done, and move on. And we know for a fact that this is exactly how they would want to play it out. Win the game on the day, give some debuts, and don't play anybody who needs rest, i.e. Moises Caicedo, i.e. Cole Palmer, i.e. Enzo Fernandez, i.e. Noni Madueke, i.e. Levi Colwill, Pedro Neto, Nicholas Jackson, all these guys. Like you just rested them without any incident. So, there isn't much to say about this game. We won it. We were better than Djurgården were over 2 legs, and we get to move on to play a much better Real Betis team, who I think, them and Fiorentina really did have a heck of a 2-leg tie.
Yeah, that is now the final as confirmed. I mean, it did go to a wonderful kind of extra time situation there to get it resolved, but 4-3 on aggregate to Betis, currently 6 in La Liga standings, and they do have a few more matches to play in their season as well. I think they actually have 4 matches left to play before they face us, and they also have that similar quick turn to get ready for that midweek. Please make sure you're taking off if you can to be available and ready to watch it wherever it is airing and whenever it is airing in the time zone that you watch it. I mean, just in general, any thoughts or feelings and opinions on the final, Nick?
It's a little early because Chelsea obviously have a pretty hardcore focus on the league until that point now. I mean, that's 20 days away, and Chelsea have 3 critical matches to play before that moment. But look, it would not shock me if you saw a team starting lineup in that game. A trophy's on the line. I bet we're going to see Cole Palmer. I bet we're going to see Nico Jackson.
No, Cole Palmer starting in a European final for Chelsea? That doesn't sound right.
I think we're probably going to see the whole gang back for the final. And it will be it's tough because it does feel unfair to those who got us to the final. I think that's one thing that I'd probably note ahead of time is like for your Dewsbury Halls and your Benoit Badiashile and the guys who have really kind of like stepped up and carried the team all the way to this point. It's going to feel very harsh that they won't get to finish the job. It's kind of that way in the FA Cup too. If you have a second team or a goalkeeper that plays all the way through, and then at the final the number one comes in, like it's difficult, but it does not fucking matter. It's all about winning a trophy. And however it gets done, these guys should get a ton of credit for getting us through, for allowing the starters in the Premier League to have a little bit of rest during the season. I'm sure it helped tremendously. We've had far fewer injuries this year than we had last year, and I think that's a huge reason for it. So, I'm just excited to get to, boy, the Polish names are tough. Wrot, which I believe is the pronunciation in the city in Poland where the final is, Dan. Wrot. I don't know. I'm doing my best here. Polish is not my specialty, but I'll tell you, it's going to be fun for those who get to go. It's a football culture, man.
Yeah, I think it was nearly 13,000 tickets being allocated to the club for supporters here. So for those who are traveling, be safe, be well, have a wonderful time. Because as we can attest, going to a European final to watch Chelsea play, just the best. Absolutely effing fantastic. And I think that's all that we have to say about this match, about another final for Chelsea, an opportunity to take a wonderful spot in the museum in Stamford Bridge and just move aside some trophies to make space for another one. Get another cabinet. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, when we were on the tour, when we were there a couple of weeks ago, Adam Burridge, former manager of the museum and stadium tours, told us they were running out of room in the trophy case. If the Chelsea women won a couple more trophies, there wouldn't be any room for their trophies. Certainly, we'd love to create a huge problem where we'd have to buy some extra cabinet space to accommodate the breadth of trophies. Dan, I think it'd be well worth the expense.
The true reason they need to renovate Stamford Bridge, just there's so many trophies.
It's
and not
exploding
enough
with trophies, Dan. That's the problem. You can't hold them in.
At least some space from Tottenham, but I wouldn't want to give them the money. Anyway, that's going to do it for this half of the podcast. We're going to throw you over to Sam and, me to talk about this Newcastle match, which is sort of like a final. So we'll get an ad break in here, and then we're going to get right to that. So thank you very much, and enjoy. All right, so normally a full pod, but coming in on the back end of our UEFA match review pod, Sam and I are here. We're having a brief conversation just about the weekend's match, a massive fixture against Newcastle United, an opportunity for Chelsea to absolutely, maybe not in stone, but absolutely in some maybe permanent pen, put their name into the top 5 consideration, into the top 5 spots for Champions League next season. Sam, we talked about this in the last couple preview pods that we've done, in what Chelsea have needed to do and what other teams have needed to do as well, or not do, to help them get into and secure this opportunity to get into Champions League next year. It does feel the DMAC energy, or the DMAC energy, is super strong right now. All it took was a kit sponsor. Chelsea have rebounded in the league. They're advancing in Europe to a final. The opportunity is there in front of them. Win versus Newcastle would be absolutely massive. How are you feeling about this one?
Same as you, actually. I'm quite buoyant about this. The big one was obviously Liverpool in terms of would we be able to put them away, and that proved to be in my opinion, just a statement when you had to go out there and prove a point, irrespective of the narrative. Champions at the beach, yada yada. But to go out there and to deliver what we did, and I do believe we came out looking like the better team. Even against their first team when they eventually came on. So I think that gives you a lot of confidence. The way that we're playing, in the middle of the game right now is also sort of like giving me a little bit of confidence that the manager's feeling good about his decisions. You're trying to put everything together and see if you can let that momentum do that bit for you. So I'm very optimistic. United scares me a little more than the other fixtures because it's just that kind of fixture. But other than that, I think the confidence is there. Players are starting to find their nick again. You and Nick, speaking of Nick, have talked about Palmer and Jackson sort of not rediscovering their form, and then suddenly sort of like both of them getting crucial goals. So looks like we set up well then.
It does feel that much better heading into the match, knowing that Cole Palmer has scored recently, that Nico Jackson has scored multiple times recently. The thing that was missing, the connective tissue of just individuals who are known for scoring goals again heading into this fixture makes things feel so much better. When we look at Newcastle, just to remind people where they're at, last match against Brighton, 1-1 draw. Match before that, they beat up on Ipswich Town, which apparently only Chelsea was unable to do this season. They won 3-0. They did lose to Villa 4-1, and then they had that 5-0 drubbing of Crystal Palace, and then the 4-1 win over Manchester United. So, I mean, their April has been very, very strong so far. And I mean, I guess maybe just where you see them kind of on the form table, Sam, where you see them on just how they're playing, how they're getting on. Outside of a blip, I mean, they've had as good of a performance in the existing top five as any, kind of really within par, and maybe just a step above. Maybe not necessarily City's kind of level, because they've obviously are 4 straight wins, but they're probably within the same type of territory, maybe even just a little bit better in how consistent they've been over their April.
Jig of trophies, then I think that one really spurred them on. The entire city was waiting for one for the longest time, and that gave them the confidence. And there have been a couple of blips, from an individual perspective. I don't know if people know, but Eddie Howe was not present on the touchline for at least 2 games because of pneumonia, from a serious bout of pneumonia. So he was recovering. But despite that, it just looks like the team was just doing their business end and trying to make sure that they can go and seal up that Champions League spot. So yeah, I think the trophy had a big thing to do with it. They've obviously got one of the most lethal frontmen in the world. That also helps. If you've got somebody like a Salah, like an Isak, who just goes out there and turns dust into gold, then obviously your team will look good irrespective of what you do. So I think that's also helped them. So it is, like you mentioned, a side that is feeling good about itself. Massive blip against Villa, which is the game that I chose to watch for this one, along with a couple of others. I saw their, game against United. I saw a little bit, not a little bit, the entire game against Brighton. So just to see where they've struggled and where the issues have been. But it is going to be a very, very tough match, and make no bones about it. It's going to be, like you mentioned, a final for, a Champions League shootout, sort of an illusory one, but a hypothetical one. But they will be going at it knowing that 3 points gives them almost like absolutely makes it certain that they'll get there.
Yeah, it does feel as if it's the almost win and in type of scenario, given the pacing of the teams behind Chelsea right now. I mean, obviously, if Forest were to win their game and whomever wins this game, I mean, you would have then one team on 63, one team on 64, and then one team on 66. So, like, you would start to see some of that separation here within positions 4 through 6. So realistically, you'd love to win this one. If it has to be a draw, it's unfortunate, but it would mean that you would then have a three-way team tie of Newcastle, Forest, and Chelsea all being on 64 points if Forest were to win their game, which is not where I want to be in any way, shape, or form. So let's talk about willing them to a win. We're doing this on the day of the Djurgården match as well, so we don't have the specifics on players for Chelsea side that are going to be unavailable or available. And then we also don't have the information from Newcastle regarding any updates to injuries for their team. So maybe we could just jump into what you've seen recently from a style of play perspective on some of the matches you've watched since the last time Chelsea faced Newcastle.
From an injury standpoint, I think 2 we can be absolutely certain of, Dan. I think Lewis Hall is definitely out. Jamal Lascelles is out. Joe Linton, just the last match before Brighton, he went to Brazil to see a specialist, and there's a very, very strong chance that he's out for the season as well. So that's, I would say, 2 key players there on the left back, as well as the key number 8. So those are definitely big misses for them. But yeah, in terms of what has worked for them, they've largely stuck to it, and we've documented it on multiple preview pods in terms of how they play. It's a style that has remained largely the same. The blueprint works. It's just minor tweaks. For example, when we played them last time, they were playing Bruno Guimaraes as the deepest central midfielder out of the 3. But against Brighton, for example, it was actually Tonali who was spending a lot of time in that number 6 position, probably to see more, better screening there in those positions, trying to capitalize on Brighton's ability to break quickly, to have a little more protection there. Tonali is quite quick, quite strong, so maybe that was the reason there. But he spent a lot of time in that position, so maybe that's a small tactical tweak that was made. But yeah, their big strength, I believe, is just their out of possession game. When you go up against a side that is in a well drilled 4-5-1 mid block, they try to use those 5 players in that second line to block off any passes through the middle. That's where it becomes dangerous, because Maresca and Chelsea want to play through the middle. They want to try and exploit those spaces. Have Caicedo, Enzo picking out those passes in the middle, Lavia picking out those passes that got us the goal against Liverpool, for example. So there is a chance that Newcastle will be looking at that and saying, okay, try and play through. We're going to intercept it and then pass the ball to Barnes or Gordon or Murphy on the right hand side and try to get at you very, very quickly. So that's going to be their game plan. It's the kind of side they like playing against, ones that love to hold possession, ones that try to play through the center. So I think it's a very good matchup for them, which is something that we have to be careful about. Defensively, I'd say it's a pretty solid unit, maybe not as solid as it used to be. They've conceded 45 and 35 this campaign, so not ideal, but I would say like still a very difficult side to come up against. In possession, where the threat lies is the rotations that they offer. Dan, the most devastating part is that on either side, you look at the left, you look at the right, it's the fullback, the number 8, the winger all rotate very fluidly. So one will end up in the half spaces, the other will overlap. Sometimes the midfielder will overlap, sometimes the fullback will underlap. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and you have to be absolutely focused to keep an eye on how it's happening. Newcastle, for example, spend almost like a very, very little percentage of their time in central areas in terms of their actions, only 24%. And the rest, like 39%, comes on the right hand side. And that's where Alexander Isak likes to drift. He will try and get in behind to make those third man runs. He will try to hit the byline on a stronger foot and pick out those crosses and cutbacks for runners. So both wings and those combinations, those quick slick combinations, is something that we have to be very careful about, because they will try and get to the boxes as soon as possible. And obviously up front needs no introduction. Alex Isak has been devastating. 23 in the league, only behind Mohamed Salah. He has 4 in his last 6, 2 of them being penalties. So probably a big drop off in terms of his output, but obviously he can link up, he can drop, he can drift to the flank, he can run both wings. He's very good at running behind for long balls. He's just like an all-round center forward. So that's something that we have to be careful about, because he likes going on those wings and overloading both flanks. And Newcastle obviously very good at set pieces in both boxes. So probably not one game where we end up getting a lucky header, but I'm hoping I'm wrong on this one.
It does feel like one where I would absolutely love for you to be wrong in that regard, but it does feel as if this is a game that will be won with multiple goals by Chelsea, if that is to be the narrative here. So, flipping then to the opposite side of the conversation, things that you've seen or observed differently over the last few matches, maybe some of the, you know, obviously gaps in their defense or players who are not available right now could change things a little bit. And then maybe just, again, they've also played a lot of football recently. Every team's getting tired now. Are you seeing that maybe as a consideration or a concern as well for them, but not for us?
I mean, yeah, having a B squad play for you helps in that regard, I guess. So, definitely, I think we are better rested. I think the momentum is definitely with us. We've also managed the squad pretty well. Like, I'll give Maresca credit for that in terms of just how he's managed minutes for Lavia, for Reese, for everybody else. Obviously, wish we had more depth options for Caicedo and Enzo, but in terms of what he's been given, he's done a very, very good job at the back end. But that legginess is something that definitely looks like it's come into Newcastle's play. I was watching the game against Brighton, and they just looked for large spells. They were just lethargic, not really as high energy in their counter press, not really making those issues that they do when they rotate very fluidly. So that's something that looked off. And then maybe like, the numbers sort of betraying it in terms of 9 goals conceded in the last 15 minutes of games, which is the most tied most with any 15-minute interval, and it's tied with the first 15 minute of games. So if you have to make a breakthrough, it'll either come in the first 15, or it's a good bet that it'll come when they're leggy in the last 15. So that's something that I should definitely point out. I would like to also, very humbly blow my trumpet here. And I said that, last time out, that you definitely have to target Dan Burn, in centre back, and you have to pull him out as much as possible. If I was Nico Jackson, I was definitely targeting that particular engagement, and I would say just do it as much as possible. And Jackson burned him like 3 times in the first 15 minutes in the reverse fixture. So that's something that I'd be looking to do. Burn is usually the one that's aggressive. Shar is somebody who sort of steps off a little bit, unless he's like marking the number 10. So get Jackson to drag him out. Get Palmer to like ease out both of those centre backs. They both have had their issues this season, not as athletic and as fit. So Burn likes to get tight. Use that against him, get that touches into space, and you could cause an incredible issue to both those centre backs, especially because Newcastle like to press very hard. If you look at the left side, Livramento has also looked shaky. He was not good against Brighton when he was defending. Obviously, doing it on his weaker left side, so that's a bit of an issue. And on the right side, like Trippier, I think has been in perpetual decline for the last year and a half. They've tried moving him on. They've tried essentially just moving past and getting Livramento on the right, Hall on the left. But if you remember the Mudryk goal that got us, to that penalty shootout, that Petrovic won it. That goal that Mudryk scored was because of Trippier's mistake. He was a little slow there. He looks like he's tentative. Looks like he's lost that burst of pace. He's lost that ability to go up and down. So I would definitely go 1v1. And when you've got Noni on the left hand side, then I think that's a very very good matchup, considering the form of both players. And the last I'd probably say is like this is something tactical in long spells when Newcastle spend their time in that 4-5-1. Alex Isak usually tries to work hard, tries to press players, will be covering all that distance as the lone player in the first line. So, if you can keep the possession and if you're a little boring, then there's a good chance that you try and get Alex Isak a little burnt out for the times that it actually matters for him to sprint and do some work. It does look like he's, the injuries, the games that he's played are starting to sort of show their effects on him. So try and get those number eights very deep. It's a small squad. It's a very predictable 11 when they're all fit. So there's very little room for rotation. So get those players tired. Try to keep Newcastle deep, because then it becomes harder for their runners to get into the box to try and give those runs. And if you can play a little measured and reduce the chaos, then I think there's a good chance you walk away with something here.
So, with all of that said, then, I mean, we do try to take some ideas and put them into some words and come up with an idea of what originally, Maresca might try to do in terms of taking this game and trying to, again, get the maximum number of points. What are some maybe questions or kind of key considerations you're mulling through that we can try to workshop here, like we normally do, where you throw a question at me and I try to figure out our parse what Maresca might actually do versus what we hope he might do?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think Nick brought this up in the review pod where he did correctly indicate that in say against teams which have got a promising left winger, and he pointed out Newcastle in particular. If I remember, he said Anthony Gordon. There might not be a lot of sense in playing Caicedo at right back, because then you're asking him to be a right back. You're also asking him to be in midfield. And when you're up against a very, very good winger like Anthony Gordon or even Harvey Barnes, who's I think scored 9 or 8 goals for them this season, has been very good, then you're sort of opening yourself up to giving Newcastle a clear weakness to target. And that is the consideration to make. Would you start Caicedo at right back, or don't fix what's not broken and sort of play Lavia and Enzo and Caicedo?
I think he's going to keep beating the drum. I mean, if it's worked for against Liverpool, both in their refreshed form and then also their, title winning teams form effectively, I would argue that you should not mess with it, even though, to your point, it does open up the door for Anthony Gordon to get an opportunity to exploit, and it is going to challenge our defense. I mean, imagine Chalobah on the right hand side with him to be very on top of their game for the day. But yeah, I just don't see a world where Enzo Maresca looks at a team that won against Liverpool and doesn't keep it the same. That's just I think that he's
Yeah.
probably in the mode of like, I want to save my I want to continue working for Chelsea. I want this team to win. I want to be in the Champions League next year. I want to get great players to come into the team next season. I want to be able to go to the Club World Cup as a winning manager of a team that is heading into the Champions League again next season. And I don't think he is going to mess with success.
Well, so I think a very ideal observation of, on the point in terms of what he is going to do. In my opinion, Dan, there is quite an interesting dynamic for Newcastle down that flank, the left hand side, because you've got Livramento who is pushing up a lot, and you've obviously got a pretty volatile, explosive winger on the left hand side, whoever it is that Eddie Howe decides to play. It has caused issues. If you look at the second half, I was rewatching the Liverpool game, and there were a couple of times where Gakpo and Tsimikas were essentially able to cleave open that flank and just burst past Caicedo in that right back slot. So I think if you do have that option, like to try and exploit Caicedo, I think they will try and exploit it. Like it's a definitely. If I was the opposition analyst here, I would say try to make that happen. There is every chance that you might get some change out of it. So that's just one that I'm keeping a very close eye on, in my opinion. I'm not certain whether it'll work, how it'll work, but yeah, that still gives me a concern. And just to sort of like maybe foreshadow some a possible concern, it's we didn't get to play against Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones and Ryan Gravenberg and their first choice midfield three. But an Enzo Lavia sort of out of possession pivot, is it going to be good enough in the big games, in the Champions League or against quick teams, against Manchester City, against full strength midfields? Is a question I'm very, very intrigued to see how it works.
That's his problem for next season when Andre Santos is here and we're living life and
hmm
Estebao's here. Like, yeah, there's so much that's going to happen next season that's different from what's happening now. We're just focused on Newcastle and getting 3 points. That's all I really want.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like it is strong midfield. Like if you were to look at just from a physicality perspective, if you look at Enzo and Caicedo is obviously better than everybody else on the pitch from a physicality and energy perspective. But those three guys do run and they do run hard. So that'll be interesting to see how the Lavia Enzo pivot matches up, in my opinion. That's something that I'm very intrigued to see. I'm hoping that it matches up. But from just that perspective of is it robust enough, there are a lot of questions. But I hope it comes through. So that's just something that I would flag up as a possible question mark. And obviously, how they target Caicedo. Is it going to be Livramento bombing forward at every opportunity? Harvey Barnes or Gordon getting inside and in the half space? Those are two things I point out as like key figures in this match. And if Newcastle are able to make the most of it.
All right. Now, with that said, then, do you have an on the ledge prediction for this one and maybe overall results performance that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I think Cole Palmer sort of goes on and essentially explodes with the performance. I think what I saw against Liverpool was the old Cole Palmer. He just looked rejuvenated. That shot that he took from near the touchline, if that
Oh,
would have gone in,
yeah.
mother of God, that was absolutely sensational. And that's when the swagger is back. The kind of just that fine line he toes between arrogance and whatever quality that you want to put on the other side of the spectrum. But it's just he was radiating it in spades. So I do think I would probably go for 2 goals from Cole Palmer, and one probably like where he just sits Dan Burn down on his ass or Fabian Schär on his butt. So one of those two things in my opinion. But Cole Palmer basically coming clutch. Do you have one as well?
Ooh, yeah. I mean that's a good one. I think that we've been wishing that one to be the reality, and I think you claimed a really good one there
Manifesting
in
it.
terms of Yeah, I mean, look, we were asking for Cole Palmer to score goals since January, and it finally happened. So we appreciate that it eventually reached his ears and got it done on the day. Mm, I am really torn on this one. I think two goal involvements for Enzo Fernandez, who's been super, super hot in terms of just what he's been able to do over kind of the matches here. He hasn't in his last five, he hasn't had two in a single game. So he's had the goal against Liverpool, he had the assist versus Everton, he had the assist versus Fulham, blanked on Ipswich and Brentford. So I would love to see a 2 plus type situation here for Enzo. And I think a little that's predicated on if we do have Caicedo at right back and Lavia's in the match, that he'll get to advance a little further forward. So I'm assuming that that happens. I know that maybe we feel like that opens up the door for Anthony Gordon, but I would love to see a little bit more of this Enzo ending the season here, because that would get him in the league up to 15 for goals and assists kind of in a total tally. And I think that would be a really, really, again, phenomenal way to end this season. I mean, he's at 20 already in all competitions here. So he's 3+ that River Plate season on 17. Let's just like, can we get to 25 plus between now and the end of the season? I think it's doable.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you look at the sample size, Dan, you've got a lot to borrow from. I think he had 3 assists versus Noah. He had a goal and assist against Leicester. He had two somewhere else. Another game where
He
he
had two versus
managed two. I
Djurgården.
think it was
Yeah,
Djurgården.
I was just trying to say
Djurgården
within
too,
the league. Yeah, I'd like to see it against the Premier League
within the league.
competition
Yeah.
and not.
I mean, he's done Brighton last season. He's done Brighton 2 goals last season, was it? That header
Yes, yeah.
and the other one that he got. Yeah, so he's done it before. So it's a very good bet to have, and he's obviously aiming to get into the box, something that Maresca's been telling him. So if you can crash the box against two slow centre backs, then who knows? The rewards are there to be taken.
Well, that's going to do it for our match preview for Newcastle coming up this weekend. Again, this will be the end of our wonderful pod here. Again, you hopefully enjoyed our match review as well on the end of our Conference League semifinal there and our pathway into the final and a trip to Poland. But we hope you enjoyed this one. Tons more content coming your way next week, as well as we get to the very, very tail end of the season and hopefully Chelsea finishing in those top 5 spots and starting off etching that into stone, hopefully, with a win against Newcastle United this weekend. But thank you so much for listening. And until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.